Here, initially we are going to see what is meant by redundancy in image. Next, the various classification of redundancies in the image, and in that, when you are seeing various classifications, it is divided into coding redundancy, interfixal redundancy, and psychovisual redundancy. So these classifications one by one we will be going to see. First we can see what is meant by that redundancy in image. So in image, the image is framed by many number of pixels. So when we are saying about the image, sometimes the same pixel information may be repeated again and again. Otherwise, some irrelevant information may be present. So, on that basis, that pixels can be said referred as redundant. So, in that ways, if you are defining a redundancy, duplication or repetition of data or presence of irrelevant data can be referred as redundancy. Can be referred as redundancy. So very simple definition on redundancy, that is duplication or repetition of data or presence of irrelevant data can be referred as redundancy. So next we can see about the classification of redundancy. So when we see about the classification of redundancy, we are having three classifications. First one is interfixal redundancy, second one coding redundancy, and third one psychovisual redundancy. So first we can see about interfixal redundancy. This redundancy we can also call as spatial redundancy. It is actually due to the correlation between neighboring pixels. It is analyzed. This interpixel means nearby pixel. We will analyze the nearby pixel in an image. If both are same, so both we can say it is correlated. There is no difference statistically. If you are see, there is no difference between this pixel and the neighboring pixel. In such case, these near interpixels, this pixel and the neighbor pixel, we can create referred as interpixel redundancy, because the same information only again it is carried by the nearby pixel. So with the help of this pixel, we can refer the neighboring pixels. So in such a case, we can avoid repetition of pixel information. So what is the thing redundancy? Why we are seeing redundancy? The same information is again and again repeated. It is not necessary. Same thing is repeated again and again. It is not necessary to consider. So this will help us to reduce the space required to store or the data while we are transferring the data transmission bandwidth time. In all this way, when these redundant data are avoided, it will be helpful. So next we can see coding redundancy. It is associated with the representation of information. So generally when we are carrying out coding, it will be represented in various forms like Huffman coding, arithmetic loading, Stanford out. Like these various codings were used to carry out code, carry out were used during encoding and decoding. Various forms of codes were used during encoding and decoding. In such case, when we are seeing, if the gray level of an image is coded in a way that uses more code symbols than absolutely necessary to represent each gray image to contain coding redundancy. That is, so uh, if we are representing using a code which contains more number of bits or more number of code symbols representing what is actually required is very less, whereas but here it is represented in more number of code symbols. Then we can say that additional that code symbols we can say it is redundant in coding. Redundant because basically with the help of early normal codes, what we record, absolute codes, what we record is itself sufficient to represent. Whereas when we are seeing some additional code symbols were available, that we can say it as coding redundancy. That can be also avoided to reduce the redundancy. So next we can see psycho-visual redundancy. What is meant by psycho-visual redundancy? Certain information simply has less relative importance than other information in normal visual processing. This information can be said to be psycho-visual redundancy. Certain information simply has less relative importance than other information in normal visual. That information can be set as psycho-visual redundancy. That is based on the importance. Here, what we will see many info. So, in an image, many informations are there. Some informations may be visually not important, not having priority, not have more importance. In such case, that information can be avoided to reduce the data size, to reduce the data size or to reduce the data representation. So when we are detailing this, we can say cycle is associated with the characteristics of human visual system. The human visual system, when we see visual information, is not perceived equally. Some information may be more important than the other. If less data is used to represent less important visual information, will not be affected. This implies that visual is visually redundant. We can eliminate that visual with to efficient compression. So here we see, so when we are psychological physiovisual that visual system, that is when we are observing the image, some portion of the image is very important and some portion we can skip that. So that areas we will identify and we will remove that. So that is called psycho-visual redundancy. So like this when we are saying